So I am Carol Icarius, and I am the former CEO of Coalitions and Collaboratives. I retired sort of a couple of years ago. Now I work about 5 hours a week instead of about 50. So that's the fun thing about retirement. And today I'm sharing this stage with Ken Pimlott, who is with the El Dorado County Regional Fire Safe Council, and has the distinction of having been a former director of CAL FIRE and state forester for California. So I think he's one of the guys who held his hand up for more than 30 years earlier. And then Stephen Watson, who is with the Ventura County Regional Fire Safe Council. Steve came with a background in therapy, which is probably a really good place to come when you're working in this particular space. Just a little bit about COCO, and then I will hand it over to Ken and Stephen to do a little more introductions for themselves. Coalitions and Collaboratives, or COCO, works nationally to help build local place-based natural resource groups that are working in collaboration with others. So forest collaborative groups, watershed coalitions, groups like that that do place-based natural resource work and that work with individuals and communities, local governments, state and federal agencies. And so one of our programs through COCO really focuses on this world of trees and fire. We do the AIM grant program, which gives communities grant funding for capacity building. So one of the things I used to say to leadership in the Forest Service is if we couch everything in just giving grants for acres, we never really get to the point that we get a lot of acres. It's the wrong metric to be the sole metric for funding. We need to first have capacity in people that can then help go out and make and create acres treated on the ground. And that can work with communities on a variety of levels in pre-fire mitigation, during fires, and after fires on post-fire recovery. We also are, where's Michelle Medley? Michelle's over there. In partnership with the Fire Adapted Network, we are creating a brand new program called the Community Navigators. That program is designed to help communities, us come to the community to help you get started, to help you figure out grants and things like that, with a particular focus on currently underserved communities. I come from Colorado, and I joke that like Boulder County does not need a lot of help. Yay, Colorado. They have plenty of money. They have very high quality, capable staff. A rural county like Huerfano County in the southern part of the state, they have very dedicated staff, but they don't have people who've been at this for 20 years. And their staff tend to wear 4 or 5 or 6 hats at the same time. So this program is designed to help communities like that with personnel that can kind of help you figure out where to go and how to get there. We also run the Mitigation Best Practices Training Program, and we work with communities on developing mitigation planning through CMAT, the mitigation assistance team that can come into a community and help them with the initial stages of mitigation planning. And finally, we do the mitigation best practices training. We have lots of people who know about trees. They don't necessarily know how best to work with communities. And so mitigation best practices does focus on that aspect when you're getting trained for it. It's how do you work with communities? How do you build trust if you've never done that? If you're a field forester, again, you know the trees, but how do you deal with citizens and HOAs and local government folks to help them get where they need to go and to help them implement their vision, which was talked a lot about this morning. So, Ken, take it away.
Great, thank you, Carol. So, as Carol said, I retired as the chief of CAL FIRE, California State Forester, at the end of 2018, and didn't really realize it at the time, but in reality, it may have been retiring from one particular piece of my career, but it was really in just closing a chapter and opening more, because in reality, like so many of us in this room, and there's a passion to engage and work in the space that we're all working in. And we certainly know there's a lot to be done. And so for me, it was a real change, though, to be on the sort of the outside after 30 plus years with CAL FIRE and doing what we do there and what we did. Engaging in El Dorado County, where I live, working with the El Dorado County Fire Safe Council. And that was a real transformation because I was used to coming from an organization very command and control. That's why CAL FIRE is successful in what it does, because we tell people what to do and it gets done. There's an organizational structure. Doesn't work so well when you walk into a room of 31 fire safe councils, all passionate volunteers, and they don't take real well to standing up there and telling them this is how we're all going to do it. So I've had to learn a lot, again, how things work. I've been engaged at the state level for many, many years. And so for me, learning and growing with a community and our communities in the county and to how our programs and policies that we work on at the state and national level, how they're being implemented at the local level and what that really means, and truly the grassroots efforts from the bottom up, but with the support and guidance of all of the people in this room, regardless of agency or organization, helping them get it done. So El Dorado County has grown in its Fire Safe Council community. No secret, I think, really since the Camp Fire in Butte County in 2018, communities in the foothills throughout California, they got scared. They're concerned, of course, about getting insurance, but they're concerned about their families and their communities, their homes burning down. So lots of engagement. And with that, we have literally gone from 15 associate fire safe councils up to now, as of last week, 31 that blanket the west slope of the county. And all of this is under the umbrella of the El Dorado Fire Safe Council, which is sort of the main 501c3 organization helping provide the glue for all of the associate councils. So I chair that council. And in the middle of all of this, of course, in 2021, the Caldor fire burned right through much of the central to eastern part of the county and up over the crest into Tahoe. That really garnered the attention of the Board of Supervisors and others, realizing, hey, this county's been doing a lot, lots of efforts, lots of grants coming, but they've been siloed. And so how do we as a county do a better job of engaging and stepping into that to help provide better guidance so that our community members that are out there working, we're giving them all the tools they need and that they're working in the right places, and how do we help establish priorities together? And so we've spent the last 2 years organizing. The Fire Safe Council's been right at the table, but also been lending some expertise with the county to help organize this. And it is change. It's how do you ensure that individual Fire Safe Councils get the resources that they need? But 31 associate councils, there's only one CAL FIRE in the unit we work in. There's only one Department of Transportation. There's only one sheriff's office, and the list goes on. And so how do we help get resources and coordinate all of that in a growing space? Across that, and not disenfranchise folks that are really working hard to do what's right for their community and get done what they want to get done. And so, again, looking forward to talking more about that today and hoping hearing some questions from you. So I will turn it over to Stephen.
Thank you, Ken and Carol. As Carol mentioned, I'm Stephen Watson, the Executive Director of Ventura Regional Fire Safe Council. First, I want to say that I empathize with Carol a little bit as our timekeeper, just because I know that I can speak at length, so I will try and force myself to keep it short. Carol mentioned that I have a background in mental health. I've worked in nonprofits for over 10 years now. I will say, compared to most of you in the room, I'm somewhat of an infant when it comes to wildfire. I've only been in this field for a couple years now, but have plenty of experience in working with nonprofits. And my mental health background has actually helped pretty tremendously. And I know that I probably need a little more therapy after grant management and working with some of these funders, unnamed. I will say that I'm very grateful to be here. I have a lot to learn. I know our organization has a lot to learn. We've grown significantly over these last few years. The Thomas Fire and the Woolsey Fire really changed things for Ventura County, and more money came in to the county, and our Fire Safe Council grew from all volunteers to a first executive director who's here today, who had to furlough himself at one point because we didn't get reimbursements on time. So we've seen some pretty incredible growth over the years, and as such, we have a lot of lessons learned. We are also not the only fire safe council in Ventura County. There are 5 fire safe councils. We are the regional ones, so we work to support the other fire safe councils as well as attempt to cover areas that may not have a fire safe council. And I'll say again, I'm really eager and looking forward to speaking with as many of you as I can to learn what's working in your county, in your areas, in your communities, because fire safe councils are different all over. They meet the needs of the community based on where they're at. And I think we're all doing similar work, and I think it would be great for us to just share resources, talk, reduce duplicating efforts. Yeah, so that's a bit about me.
Thanks, guys. So, Ken, I'm going to start with you. There are hundreds of fire safe councils in this state, and I think sometimes, and especially for community members, but also even for agencies and other folks, there's confusion about like what's a fire safe council compared to FireWise, compared to Ready, Set, Go, compared to other programs that are out there. So can you talk a little bit about the differences between fire safe councils and other programs in this space?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Stephen said it, fire safe councils really take on the flavor of the community or the area. And we've even learned in El Dorado County, don't always call it a community because people don't associate, it's an area. So it's really learning and understanding what is unique to any particular area. And the fire safe councils evolve and organize based on that. And they are oftentimes the ones going after the funding. They are able to organize, many cases, into 501c3s. They're able to apply for grants. They're able to work with partners, whether it's a resource conservation district or others, as a project manager to get work done on the ground. I talk about 31 fire safe councils in El Dorado County. Well, at the same time, of course, we've got a burgeoning interest in FireWise communities. And that's been something that has been somewhat uncoordinated, if you will, at least in our county, because just so many are interested in the insurance discount and the implications that it could have. So these are just blossoming. Everybody wants a map. Everybody wants to define boundaries, and they want folks to come out and help with their assessments. But it's very focused on a very particular part of the home, the built environment, making those assessments, and it's for kind of a very specific program, all very good, and all very much dovetailing into these other programs. But it is, again, just one program amongst other programs. And again, and in many cases, FireWise communities mirror or match the same boundaries. They're managed by the same board as a fire safe council. But fire safe councils, again, are much more, they're unique, they're different across the landscape, and they meet sort of a different purpose for what they're trying to accomplish in fire safety and fire prevention in their community.
Stephen, anything to add?
Yeah, I think the first thing I'll add is that when I started working in the wildfire field, I was very confused. There are a lot of terms, there are a lot of acronyms, we throw them around, we talk about the WUI, the CWPPs, all these things that people won't know when we're talking about them, and we need to remember to tailor our language toward the community and making it more digestible and easy for people to understand what we're talking about. Similarly, with Ken, there's been a huge surge in interest when it comes to FireWise communities. The insurance is a big hook, for sure. I will say that Ventura County, we're very, very fortunate to have the Ventura County Fire Department. They've worked with us every step of the way when it comes to FireWise communities, and it really has felt like a collaborative effort where we've touched base with Larry's here, but over 40 FireWise communities at this point that are working toward becoming FireWise communities. We had a low amount of FireWise communities at the start of the year. We've more than doubled it at this point and looking to see even bigger growth. But I would say the difference between maybe a Fire Safe Council and these other programs, at least from my perspective, is that the Fire Safe Council is an organization, a community-based organization that can promote these programs. So we're kind of a conduit for these different programs.
Great. So, Stephen, how do you view the role of fire safe councils in working with others like local elected officials, fire district folks, HOAs, community members individually, the whole suite of people that we've talked about this morning need to be engaged?
I would say we've heard the term, we've heard people say a few times now that wildfire preparedness is a shared responsibility, and I agree with that. Whatever the reason is, fire is changing, and our response and our adaptation to fire needs to change as well. And I think the role of the Fire Safe Council is to try and connect some of those dots, working with the community. We're a very grassroots-driven organization where we can kind of play the nonprofit card a little bit and show up to a homeowner's home, and they won't feel as concerned maybe than if someone's coming with a badge. They might worry they're gonna get cited. They might worry it might come back to bite them. But nonprofits, fire safe councils, we can go there and purely be educational, really have them feel like we're on their side. And I think that speaks volumes, especially when we do these workshops, we cultivate FireWise communities, and try and be a liaison as much as we can between the fire department, the community. We even meet and talk with elected officials to try and spread the message, have everyone be a bit on the same page when it comes to wildfire preparedness. I would also really maybe warn, as something we've learned over the course of or at least my time, is knowing the limits of a fire safe council, knowing the limits of a nonprofit. We're not going to show up with a bunch of buckets of water when a fire comes. We're gonna leave it to the experts, right? So I think it's really, really important that you look internally and realize what your role is and define that before you go out and try and save the world, essentially.
Ken, anything to add?
I think everything that Stephen said, and then also really it's being a convener. We find that we are the one place where all of our stakeholders come together, where it's the utilities, CAL FIRE, the Forest Service, water districts. They all feel like this is the one place where they can meet and share information, and they're reaching the community in this piece. And also important, defining, again, what your role, as Stephen said. We want it to be a safe place and a comfortable place for people to talk about issues and concerns and positive efforts in this space. So we're very careful. This is not a political, well, we engage our elected officials, very much so, but we don't take necessarily political positions. We, again, want this to be a safe, positive place.
And I think that's a key to collaboration, is that, you know, we're not here to be an R or a D when we're at this table. We're here to be people working together. So, Stephen, another question for you is, how do fire safe councils make sure they interact and support typically underserved communities, the rural communities like we heard about this morning, people of color, indigenous communities, those folks who, you know, I look in Colorado and there are places that have lots of money. There are these communities that don't. What do you see FSCs doing for those communities?
Well, again, to speak transparently, I think that's something we're still striving for, and I think it's something we'll keep striving for. And we have a lot to learn and a lot to improve in that realm. I will say that a lot of the funders want you to speak toward that when you're doing grant applications, looking toward disadvantaged communities, underserved communities. But it's not enough to just make a flowery application to send off to a funder. I think it's important that we remember we actually have to do what we're saying we're going to be doing. I would say possibly the biggest lesson learned from our organization is to not act like we know what's best, and to rely on the other community partners and community-based organizations that are already out there. For example, we had MyCOP earlier on one of the panels, and you heard all the amazing things they did already with the Thomas Fire, the post-fire recovery, making things accessible to some of these underserved indigenous communities. So it would be almost inappropriate for us as a fire safe council to step in and try and do that. It's more appropriate for us to partner with these organizations. So we send our information, we have it translated in Spanish, we send it to the promotores who will then distribute it to their communities, instead of us trying to bypass that, to try and access communities that don't know about us, don't trust us. Because if we're going that way, it would be inefficient, I think, and really miss the spirit of trying to collaborate and work with other organizations who know it best. I think we did a UCSB, we worked with UCSB Bren School on a study when we were creating the community wildfire protection plans on this very topic. And one example of the thing they found is, if many of you aren't familiar with Ventura County, there's an area called Piru, which is relatively low income, mostly Spanish speaking. And we learned that the way that they consume and receive information is not typically the way that we put information out there. For example, a newsletter or social media posts, things like that, they're saying it was less effective from the surveys and focus groups. They have a train station there. You put up a flyer there, that's where people are gonna get their information. So I think it's adjusting and adapting to the various communities, and they're all gonna be different. So we need to work with the organizations, the people, even community-based efforts like the Piru Neighborhood Council to really, really know how to serve those people. I know I'm going on for a while, but one other example is we got a grant to do minor retrofits on low-income senior homes. We sent out, gosh, over 10,000 direct mailers, relatively low feedback from those direct mailers. We then partnered with Senior Concerns and just had that same mailer in their Meals on Wheels program to these low-income seniors and saw a bunch of calls coming in. So it's really important to work with the organizations that are already out there serving these communities.
Ken, anything to add?
Just we have a similar partnership, in particular for us has been our partnership with the Friends of Seniors, the Veterans Commission, and our flagship has been our Defensible Space program for seniors, veterans, and low income that's really blossomed to support those folks to get that work done.
Great. Ken, who are some of the experts that fire safe councils work with, like agency people, researchers, university academics, and how do you incorporate their input into your work at a fire safe council?
Yeah, no, very good question, and I think certainly it depends on where you're at around the state as to who's active and the demographics and the geography. But certainly, obviously for us, CAL FIRE has a significant presence. We've been fortunate enough that they're even developing a wildfire resiliency program, and it's being piloted in our area. So we've had great participation from CAL FIRE. We have the National Forest, so we work very closely with the El Dorado National Forest. But we've been partnering with the UC Cooperative Extension, particularly as they've been rolling out and working on the prescribed burn associations. And so we've been partnering at least to help share information. Master gardeners, because a lot of work going into defensible space and home hardening discussions, as we've been talking about here. But what are the right plans? And there's lots of information out there about what to do and what not to do. And so bringing those experts in, and periodically we have workshops and allow them to come in. But obviously it's the full gamut. The Resource Conservation District in our county has been probably our #1 supporter of project management, and so we're very closely related with them to get work done on the ground.
So the question of how do you keep grandma's roses going? Stephen, anything to add?
I'll just add on to that. Similarly, we work closely with the Resource Conservation District. You've heard about the Ventura County Wildfire Collaborative. We're lucky to have that funded by CAL FIRE, be able to work closely with Ventura County Fire Department. Another example is the community wildfire protection plans. It would be maybe prideful at some point to think that we could do it all on our own. So we need to rely on these partners, worked with BrinkCon consultants to help out people who are already established and have that background, that knowledge that someone like me who's relatively new to the field doesn't have. So I think it's important to maybe put your ego and pride aside a little bit and work with those who are already established.
Great. We'll do one last of our questions, and I promised Tegan we would make time to get some audience questions. No? I couldn't hear. 5 minutes, right. So just quickly, how do you work in like landscape planning, balancing resources, and bringing funding to get work done?
So I think the Fire Safe Council's role, at least in our perspective, our Fire Safe Council, again, it's different, is to bring in those funds to meet the needs of the community. We're a little bit more flexible and nimble as a nonprofit Fire Safe Council to be able to easily apply for some of these grants. I want to, shout out to California Fire Safe Council. They make it easy to apply for grants on their behalf. I also really want to give some credit to CAL FIRE for the county coordinator. And Ventura Regional Fire Safe Council is the county coordinator in our area, and that's helped bring us more together. Quick example of how it's helped is that we have a better understanding of who's doing what in the county. So we're not duplicating efforts. There was a defensible space grant that came up and we had a month to apply. I gave a call to every single fire safe council like, hey, this is what it's about. You guys going for it? Maybe we can go in on it together. We talked to Bell Canyon. It's for a low income thing. So talked with them, made sure like, okay, they're probably not the best fit for it. And just making sure that we're connecting with all of these partners based on the opportunity that arises from something like this county coordinator, to make sure that we're being efficient and not just wasting funds, and being really, really intentional about when we apply for grants, and not just do it for the sake of getting money. Because I know that can be tempting to just keep applying and applying and applying, but sometimes it's best to know when you need to take a breath and kind of reestablish yourself, make sure you're not biting off more than you can chew, and just talk to your partners, talk to your community members, and network.
Ken, anything to add?
Just echo what Stephen said, and I think the key piece is the victim of our success. And with 31 fire safe councils, I think we're processing right now $14 million in grants. And this is an all-volunteer organization, even at the umbrella regional council level, that we're having to go out now and get some temporary help. And I think that's the point, know when to take a break, but setting priorities. And now it's the county is helping provide some of that guidance with the partners through coordination, so it's not just the fire safe council alone. All 31 councils think and know that for various obvious reasons they're the priority and where they're at, but how do we manage that across the landscape? Because we're all applying for the same amount of grant money that's out there.
Yeah. All right, questions from the audience?
Hello, JC Hyde. I'm the Executive Director for the California Fire Safe Council. For those of you who don't know, we are the statewide Fire Safe Council, and our role is to support that work and the efforts of the 300 local fire safe councils around the state who are doing phenomenal wildfire resiliency work in the space. Really excited to see two of our local partners here highlighted for their knowledge and expertise. As a grant, you have a room full of grant makers here, amongst other things, and our role has been, as much as possible through our clearinghouse, to reduce the friction of money getting into the hands of these local fire safe councils. But you receive funding from all over, different organizations, federal, state, local, private, and I'd love to hear you both talk a little bit about what can be done to make that easier on you to be able to prioritize projects and get projects funded more effectively, reduce the administrative burden.
Well, maybe I'll take a shot first, if that's okay. And I was worried when JC raised her hand, because that's a tough table right there. They're going to ask hard questions. So, I will, and not just because you're asking it, JC, but the State Fire Safe Council probably has one of the simplest forms of, and an ease to work with. And quite frankly, the CAL FIRE grants are very similar. Meaning no disrespect, the federal grants are hard, and the reporting requirements are awkward, and as you work your way up to FEMA, it gets very challenging, right? And so I think simplicity for these groups that are, again, almost entirely managed by volunteers is best, because it's not just applying for the grant, it's the quarterly reporting, it's the paying invoices, it's all of that. And we've worked for El Dorado County, who received a grant for a fire safe coordinator. I think we were, of course, one of the unique people in the state who ran into a challenge, as we couldn't renew our contract because it had expired, and we had some extension opportunities, and the funding could have been provided to continue the agreement, but we didn't have the ability as a county to extend the expired agreement. And so I think it's continuing as we learn these things, JC, to figure out how we kind of work through them. And I know we're a pilot in lots of different pieces. We recognize we're going to learn as we go, but the more we can provide advance notice, simplify processes, simplify reporting requirements. We discovered all of our grants, their quarterly reports are due at the exact same time. So it doesn't matter what level of grant, everybody's busy now scrambling to try to get the information. So it's just a timing piece, is creating workload at certain times. So Stephen's probably got a ton of things.
Well, yeah, I know. I'm looking at the time. We have like less than a minute. If I had an hour, I could use it all. But I'll say that really quickly, and maybe I shouldn't say it, but the reimbursement and the time it takes to get the funds is unacceptable right now. Sometimes we're waiting 6+ months to get the funds, and we have to front the money for 6 months of operating costs. It's not inclusive to some of the smaller fire safe councils, to some smaller organizations who want to apply but are intimidated by that. So that is what I will say.